Welcome to Searching the Scriptures. Our Bible teacher will be Gunther von Harringa Sr. In this series of studies, we will be focusing on the book of Judges. So without further ado, let's look into God's Word, the Bible.
Good evening and welcome to Searching the Scriptures. This is going to be part 25 of chapter 3 in the book of Judges. And today's date is March 8th, 2017. I'll read verses 21 to 25 of this historical parable. And Ehud put forth his left hand and took the dagger from his right thigh and thrust it into his belly. And the haft also went in after the blade, and the fat closed upon the blade, so that he could not draw the dagger out of his belly, and the dirt came out. Then Ehud went forth through the porch, and shut the doors of the parlor upon him, and locked them. When he was gone out, his servants came, and when they saw that, behold, the doors of the parlor were locked, they said, Surely he covereth his feet in his summer chamber. And they tarried till they were ashamed. And behold, he opened not the doors of the parlor. Therefore they took a key and opened them. And behold, their Lord was fallen down dead on the earth. In our last study, we were investigating the term locked in verse 23. This is Strong's number 5274 in Hebrew. Then Ehud went forth through the porch and shut the doors of the parlor upon him and locked them. This word only appears in 5 other verses, besides Judges 3:23 to 24. These other passages can be categorized into 2 groups. One that conveys the idea of putting on shoes, and the word that is used is the word shod, in order to cover one's bare feet, representing one that is spiritually barefoot or naked, which in the Bible, to be spiritually barefoot or naked has to do with being under the wrath of God. And so to put on shoes in this context has to do with God's salvation program during the day of salvation. The second group has to do with locking or bolting a door shut. Let's look at some of the verses in the first grouping. We'll look at 2 Chronicles 28:15. Excuse me. This account has to do with when Israel fought against Judah during the reign of wicked King Ahaz of Judah, and 200,000 of Judah were taken into captivity. However, through a prophet, God instructed them that they should be released in the following manner. And the men which were expressed by name rose up and took the captives, and with the spoil clothed all that were naked among them, and arrayed them and shod them, and gave them to eat and to drink, and anointed them, and carried all the feeble of them upon asses. Excuse me. And brought them to Jericho, the city of palm trees, to their brethren. Then they returned to Samaria. Another account is in Ezekiel 16, and here God is reviewing how gracious he has been to Israel historically, and in verse 10 this same word is rendered and shod. I clothed thee also with broidered or embroidered work, and shod thee with badger skin, and I girded thee about with fine linen, and I covered thee with silk. The second grouping includes the account of the rape of Tamar by Amnon in 2 Samuel 13, 7 through 8. There we read, Then he, this is Amnon, called his servant that ministered unto him and said, Put now this woman out from me and bolt the door after her. And she had a garment of divers colors upon her. For with such robes were the king's daughters that were virgins apparelled. Then his servant brought her out and bolted the door after her. So twice we find this language in verses 7 and 8. Excuse me. The other passage that I would like to now address is Canticles, or Song of Solomon 4:12, in which this word appears twice. Once as a garden enclosed and a spring shut up. There's also a third metaphor in view, although it's not described by this particular Strong's number 5274. It's a fountain sealed. A garden enclosed is my sister, my spouse, a spring shut up, a fountain sealed. As I mentioned previously, the Song of Solomon is a parable highlighting the marriage union between Christ, the bridegroom, pardon me, and his eternal church, the bride. And this particular chapter pinpoints various female anatomical characteristics in order to emphasize particular spiritual truths that God has hidden. The bride is also in view in verses 9 through 10, 12, and 5:1. By the two connected terms, my sister and my spouse, as she typifies all the elect. This is Song of Solomon 4, 9 through 10. Excuse me a second, I'm going to get a drink of water. Thou hast ravished my heart, my sister, my spouse. Thou hast ravished my heart with one of thine eyes, with one chain of thy neck. How fair is thy love, my sister, my spouse. How much better is thy love than wine, and the smell of thine ointments than all spices. And then in Song of Solomon 5:1, it says, I am come into my garden, my sister, my spouse. I have gathered my myrrh with my spice. I have eaten my honeycomb with my honey. I have drunk my wine with my milk. Eat, O friends, drink, yea, drink abundantly, O beloved. As I stated earlier, in verse 12, the bride, typifying all the elect, is referred to as a garden enclosed and as a spring shut up and a fountain sealed. Let's take a look at each of these descriptions individually. That way, if God is pleased, he might give us some understanding as to their spiritual significance. Let's take the first one, a garden enclosed. This Hebrew term garden is Strong's number 1588, and again the word enclosed is 5274. Garden is found 42 times in the Old Testament, and it's always translated as such. It's used in conjunction with the first garden mentioned in the Bible, the Garden of Eden, in which mankind was first tested and failed. This word also appears 8 times in the Song of Solomon, in chapter 4, verses 12, 15 through 16, also in chapter 5, verse 1, chapter 6, verse 2, and chapter 8, verse 13. Actually, the Song of Solomon is the book with the second greatest number of references to garden after the book of Genesis. A garden enclosed is my sister, my spouse, a spring shut up, a fountain sealed, a fountain of gardens, a well of living waters, and streams from Lebanon. Awake, O north wind, and come, thou south, blow upon my garden, that the spices thereof may flow out. Let my beloved come into his garden and eat his pleasant fruits. These next citations include the term garden and are centered on salvation during the day of salvation, and they underscore God's constant provision to nourish the souls of his people with spiritual food and drink during both the day of salvation as well as in our present day of judgment. And we could also add throughout eternity future. The first one is Isaiah 51:3. For Jehovah shall comfort Zion. He will comfort all her waste places, and he will make her wilderness like Eden, and her desert like the garden of Jehovah. Joy and gladness shall be found therein, thanksgiving and the voice of melody. Also, if we go to Isaiah 58:11, we find a similar description. And Jehovah shall guide thee continually, and satisfy thy soul in drought, and make fat thy bones. And thou shalt be like a watered garden, and like a spring of water, whose waters fail not. So we see how this ties in to our verse. Also, if we go to Jeremiah 31:12, here it states, Therefore they shall come and sing in the height of Zion, and shall flow together to the goodness of Jehovah, for wheat, and for wine, and for oil, and for the young of the flock and of the herd. And their soul shall be as a watered garden, and they shall not sorrow any more at all. So again, both in Isaiah 58:11 and here in Jeremiah 31:12, we see the idea of the soul being spiritually satisfied, being spiritually nourished with spiritual food and drink. And so this is an important idea here. Now, the next term we want to look at, or two terms, is a spring shut up. And again, the word shut up is 5274. The word for spring is 1530. And it has some really interesting connotations besides spring, which is the only place where this word is rendered in our verse. Everywhere else, it is translated as heaps, waves, and billows, and can refer to the judgment on the churches, on the world presently, as well as on the Lord Jesus Christ prior to creation as the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world, just to name a few. Most significantly, this particular word, and it's gal, is actually derived from a root word, which is galal, Strong's number 1556. And you might recall this as we've encountered it in some of our previous studies. It's the term rolled away, found, for instance, in verse 9 of Joshua 5, 1 through 9. And here God is actually defining this word for us in this highly significant account. Please note that it says 3 times, signifying the purpose of God, that Joshua, representing Christ, because Joshua is the, or I should say Jesus is the transliteration, the Greek word for the Hebrew word Joshua. Joshua, representing Christ, is circumcising those who had been born during the 40-year sojourn, which spiritually corroborates the fact that God is the only one who can spiritually circumcise the hearts of his elect, as Deuteronomy 30, verse 6 insists. And Jehovah thy God will circumcise thine heart, and the heart of thy seed, to love Jehovah thy God with all thine heart and with all thy soul, that thou mayest live. All right, I'm going to read Joshua 5, 1 through 9. And it came to pass, when all the kings of the Amorites, which were on the side of Jordan westward, and all the kings of the Canaanites, which were by the sea, heard that Jehovah had dried up the waters of Jordan from before the children of Israel, until we were passed over, that their heart melted, neither was there spirit in them any more, because of the children of Israel. At that time, Jehovah said unto Joshua, remember, he's representing Christ, make these sharp knives and circumcise again the children of Israel the second time. And Joshua made him sharp knives and circumcised the children of Israel at the hill of the foreskins. And this is the cause why Joshua did circumcise. Excuse me. For the children of Israel walked 40 years in the wilderness, till all the people that were men of war, which came out of Egypt, were consumed, because they obeyed not the voice of Jehovah, unto whom Jehovah sware that he would not show them the land, which Jehovah sware unto their fathers, that he would give us, a land that floweth with milk and honey. And their children, whom he raised up in their stead, them Joshua circumcised. For they were uncircumcised, because they had not circumcised them by the way. And it came to pass, when they had done circumcising all the people, that they abode in their places in the camp till they were whole. And Jehovah said unto Joshua, this day have I rolled away the reproach of Egypt from off you. Wherefore the name of the place is called Gilgal unto this day. This word, have I rolled away, is the root word for spring. It's galal, and spring is gal. It's also interesting that this is also the root word for Gilgal. Actually, Gilgal is the grandparent word, I believe. It's Strong's number 1537. So we see the tie-in between rolled away and Gilgal, and now spring. And so we see, and of course, spring carries, among other things, the connotation of water, which denotes the water of life, in the same way that circumcision also has to do with spiritual life. That is spiritual circumcision, not physical circumcision. That's just a sign pointing to the much deeper, much greater spiritual reality, which is spiritual circumcision, which has to do with spiritual life. All right, well, I think we'll stop here today. Lord willing, in our next study, we're going to discuss the third metaphor of fountain sealed that we find here in the book of Song of Solomon, chapter 4. So I hope that you can join us, if you're able to, in our next study. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today for Searching the Scriptures. Until next time, to God be the glory.